Alrighty, so welcome to the first of the iPolitics debates. I will be your co-host and co-moderator as well as one of the debaters. My name is Nate. I'm known on iFunny, or formerly known on iFunny, I should say, as LA24 and Gold. I've since quit using the app, but I was informed via Kick by someone who I will not name. Things were happening, these debates, and part of the reason that I left iFunny was due to the lack of true intellectual learning and content, and I figured this would actually be a pretty good remedy, so I did volunteer to be in these debates. Now I'll let my other co-moderator slash host slash debater introduce himself.
I'm Henry. I'm from iFunny. You know me as Enlightenment. I set this thing up, and the first episode was originally supposed to be an abortion debate. I'm sure you saw the post. That kind of fell through. The members couldn't come through like they said they could. So we were able to set this one up kind of in the nick of time, give you a little introduction to ourselves and how these are going to be structured.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, in future debates, either myself or Henry will be the moderator taking a neutral position. Unfortunately, too, that Henry brought up earlier, we're kind of ourselves, which we will do the best that we can of. So trying to be unbiased in terms of not rambling too much, we're going to attempt to moderate ourselves in terms of language and attitude. But in subsequent debates, there will be a single moderator, either myself or Henry, or possibly in the future, depending on how this goes, someone else. Because of the situation, we do not have a moderator for this specific one. So the topic, of course, which everyone wants to know. Henry, do you want to introduce the topic?
Yeah, so for the most part, me and Nate agree on a lot of issues. So Nate thought he would decide to take a devil's advocate stance, kind of sharpen his debate skills. So the topic in general will be Hillary and her candidacy as for president in 2016. Nate, you want to expand on your position a little bit, and then I'll go.
Exactly. Of course, in terms of my legitimate beliefs, I do support Hillary for 2016, but I feel like, it not only be an intellectual exercise, but also be a little fun. And, also regarding the situation, we didn't have enough time to essentially prepare. And unfortunately, most of the topics that we both are very knowledgeable about are topics that we agree on. So one of us had to take a devil's advocate position. So regardless, my position is supporting Bernie Sanders for the president of the United States in 2016, or Henry will support Hillary Clinton. And we will state our reasons why. Henry, do you want to start off with that, or do you want me to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
Hillary Clinton is far, far and away the most experienced candidate in the field. More experience than any of the candidates, more experience in nearly all the branches. She was one of the top 200 lawyers in the United States. She was Secretary of State. She negotiated huge deals between countries. She defended huge clients in high up cases. She knows what she's doing. She's been in the political world for a long time. Yet through all of that, she's continued to fight for the same values. And she's also one of the most bipartisan, with the highest record of bipartisanship. And I think she's what we need. She'll be very similar to Barack Obama, if not with only difference being efficiency. Could see her being a third term for Obama or third term for Bill Clinton, two of our best modern presidents.
Is that your beginning statements?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will not deny that Hillary Clinton is, by a wide margin, more experienced than any of the candidates she's running against. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she should be the president of the United States. Bernie Sanders, for example, has been involved in politics for a very long time, and I will also agree that doesn't mean that he should be. While I do agree that someone should have experience, I believe that while there is no set level, once you have a decent amount of experience further than that isn't quite as relevant. And I also would like to counter on your point of she's consistently fought for the same values. Now, I understand the circumstances regarding her stances. That's a little bit redundant there in a sentence. Of her positions, for example, such as gay marriage. I mean, she was in a position of power when it wasn't necessarily good to support gay marriage, and she did support gay people, just not the marriages. Regardless, people like Senator Sanders have consistently been involved in the same issues for his very long life. I mean, of course, you've seen the photo of him getting arrested while protesting for civil rights. I think Sanders is much more consistent in terms of his issues, and you do see that in the support, at least in my personal experience. Well, this is a bit of anecdotal evidence. Everyone that I've talked to, they've seen that Hillary Clinton, for political reasons or not, changed her stances on issues, and a lot of people do see it as flip-flopping, which I would say I see it as well. I think that if she was really caring about these issues, she would have put herself and her values before her political career, which is actually exactly what Sanders did. Never got higher in government than a senator from Vermont. Not exactly a prestigious position, but he has stayed consistent with his values through his very long life. And that would be my first counter to you. Do you have any other points you want to bring up? Do you want to counter me?
Yeah, I'd like to counter part of what you said. First being Senator Sanders has extensive support as well, or it's not even on a level as Hillary. Mayor for a small Vermont town is not comparable to a senator, Secretary of State, one of the most politically active first ladies in our history.
I never said it was. I began my points with there is no doubt that Hillary is more experienced than Sanders.
There was an implication just in the way you kind of phrased. Sanders has experience as well. I would say Sanders does have experience, not on a level that it's that you can really bring it up. Almost every presidential candidate, every one of these cycles is going to have political experience. It's what level, how can you bring that up?
Well, that's exactly what I brought up in the closing statements of what I previously just said, is that a lot of people, I'm guessing including yourself, will defend Secretary Clinton's statements in terms of her changing positions as making sure that her political career doesn't go completely under. But you look at Senator Sanders, who hasn't gotten very high. A senator from Vermont is not a very high or prestigious position. Regardless, he has stayed true to his values, and I think that's something that really separates the two, is while they do share a very similar value now, one has a history of consistently supporting those values over his political career, has a history of supporting their political career over their values. I think that's something that's really important.
Okay.
And hold on, one more point. You did mention Barack Obama being one of the greatest presidents in modern history. To which you also said in the very same spiel that Secretary Clinton's experience makes her a more qualified candidate, while Senator Barack Obama was a one-term senator before he ran for president. So I think that, it definitely goes to show that it isn't necessarily experience that makes you a good president.
Well, I would like to, about Barack Obama, want to read the full quote. What I said about him was one of the best presidents, and then I followed it up with Hillary would be similar to a third-term Obama, a little more efficient even. Also, I think it's pretty easily arguable that Barack Obama's second term was more successful than his first term. And it's also easily arguable that the second term he was more moderate, more bipartisan. values or things that Hillary Clinton excels at.
That is a very fair point.
And then regarding the gay marriage thing, I'd like to say Bernie Sanders opposed DOMA, I believe, on states' rights issues and whatever his reason. He hasn't been this total LGBT hero. I mean, he fought for it when he did, but not as much. Even though Hillary did not support gay marriage, she has done more for the LGBT community than Bernie Sanders has. She was the first lady to march in a pride parade. As Secretary of State, she went to the UN to pass pro-LGBT and stop discrimination in countries. She worked with Kenya, with Obama, to stop some of their viciously anti-gay laws. She's done ultimately much more work abroad and domestic than Bernie Sanders has. And you can say all you want, she compromised her values, air quotes around that. But is that what we need? Do we need a president who won't budge on issues? All of politics is about trade-offs and lesser of two evils and kind of accepting things the best way you can get them. You have to remember, Bernie Sanders didn't even support Obamacare originally. Liberals had to go to him and ask for his support just to get it through Senate, because before the progressives like him were too opposed to it. And Obamacare wouldn't have passed if it didn't have the more moderate changes put in place to appeal to the Republicans.
I think that you're really negating a lot of the things that I've said. I mean, like, I've already established the fact that Senator Sanders, of course, doesn't exactly have a prestigious political career. He could have, for example, gone to Kenya and helped repeal those laws. He doesn't have the influence to do so. My argument is that regardless of his actual impact, like you've mentioned, Hillary, of course, has done quite a lot to help the LGBTQ community. It's the fact that she's willing to undercut the values in order to further her political career. It's not necessarily an example. I'm not necessarily saying that you shouldn't compromise, but there are some things that when I'm voting for someone, I don't want compromised on. I mean, when you vote for a candidate, there are things that they say. It's like, for example, if Obama, one of his big promises of his election, the thing that he wrote in on was Obamacare. If he says Obamacare, 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 I mean, and look what happened when it actually got passed. It was so watered down and so neutered that it was only a shell of what it was originally supposed to be. Now, I understand that is how the American political system works. You do need to make compromises. But I do think that your values should also be there. I mean, that's why you vote for someone. I mean, and it's not just gay marriage that she, flip-flopped on. She, advocated for the TPP, for example, and then she didn't. She's outspoken against super PACs, but she's received money from super PACs. There are certain things where your values should go before pragmatism, in my personal opinion. Just like, for example, the United States policy of not negotiating with terrorists. There were many, many examples where we could have saved American citizens' lives. But instead of that, we stood on our values and our principles and the things that we've promised, which was we will not negotiate with terrorists.
Okay, correct. I wouldn't go so far as to call the opposing party and bipartisanship negotiating with terrorists. I don't think that's a great analogy to be using here. And then regarding sticking to your values, you still stick to your values, maybe not at the same extent. But what good is Bernie Sanders rambling and ranting in his office about healthcare and about all these things and not getting anything done? Whereas Hillary Clinton, as First Lady, fought for healthcare reform. Barack Obama got healthcare passed. Did Bernie Sanders do that?
Bernie Sanders was a senator.
Sure. Exactly. He stayed a senator because that's all he could do.
And right now he's
he would
president of the United States.
Yeah. As president, he's not going to get things done with that attitude. You look at Barack Obama, he didn't sacrifice his values. Barack Obama did not sacrifice his values. He didn't want, if you let him just pick whatever he wanted for healthcare, he would not have come up with the Affordable Care Act passed under his administration. It would look much different. You're right about that. But that's what he had to do to get healthcare reform passed. Would Bernie Sanders do that? You can't have this black and white, all or nothing mentality when it comes to politics. That just doesn't make sense. Also, a lot of Bernie Sanders' values I would disagree with concerning healthcare and such.
I wouldn't necessarily say he wouldn't get anything done. I think you also have to remember it's highly dependent of who he's working with. For example, when Obama had his first term, the first 2 years of his first term, he had majority Democrat House and Senate. In the later years of his first and then the entirety of his second term, it was Republican controlled. It's also dependent on who gets elected there, whether or not certain things happen. I think that Bernie won't necessarily accomplish a whole lot, which I'm sure sounds very poor if you were to quote mine me. I think what he will do is start something. Gradual change of the United States. But I think he'll start it a lot faster, and the change will happen a lot faster under a President Sanders and a President Clinton. And you yourself said she does compromise on a lot of things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that issues change much slowly. Senator Sanders would, of course, appoint a much more progressive Supreme Court justice than President Clinton. He would provide, and if it shut down, he would just keep doing it. He would, of course, push for a lot more progressive things. He would change the image of America on the world stage in favor of a more progressive one. And he still does have executive orders. While, of course, he can't do something like change the entirety of the American healthcare system via executive orders, there are a lot of things that are very conservative, or not very conservative, very liberal, he can do via that system. It would be
Why didn't Obama do those things?
Obama has made a lot of executive orders.
But if those things are...
And a lot of them are very similar to what, for example, a President Clinton would do.
But why is Bernie, if Bernie and Obama are similar, but Obama compromises?
When did I say that Bernie and Obama were similar?
In their values, not in their policy making.
I mean, I guess
that's kind of been the implication among this whole Bernie Sanders, Obama, Bernie
really
Sanders, Hillary.
Obama and Sanders, I would say Obama is much closer to Hillary than he is to Bernie, except maybe in the case of personality. But, I mean, personality really doesn't matter a whole lot. I would say, like, for example, a major executive order that Obama signed was last year. He had some minor gun restrictions. But, like I said, they're very minor. You wanted to make sure that he didn't enrage any of the Republicans. And he did just that. It really didn't have a huge effect on anything. Well, I'm not saying that Sanders is going to sign something like take away all guns. His influence, I mean, the president doesn't necessarily have a lot of power, but he does have a lot of influence.
Sanders hasn't made guns one of his main issues like Hillary has.
No, but I'm using that as an example because that was a major, or quote, major, unquote, executive order from Obama that made headlines. So that's what I was using as an example, is that Senator Sanders or President Sanders won't necessarily do something outrageous with executive orders for his extremely progressive values, but he would definitely influence politics, and that's something that the president is really. That's really the president's main job, in my personal opinion, is influence. The president doesn't have a lot of direct control over much. While he or she is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, there's still an army of generals and other assorted military advisors helping them with their decisions. And they, while on paper they are, in reality, they tend not to be the end-all be-all for every military operation. They do have executive orders, but those tend to be very moderate and non-issues a lot of the time. What they do have is a lot of influence. They're the face of the nation on the world stage. They have a lot of influence over what the American people think and what they hear, considering that if they say almost anything, it gets printed in the publications because they are the President of the United States. So, President Sanders would definitely, in my opinion, influence a voting populace. I think especially provided that he is elected and things do either not really change a whole lot, because I think we're in a pretty good position in the United States right now, or things change for the better, which is more Congress's job than his. It would definitely show that a more European style of governing could benefit the American people.
And I would like to say to that, sorry, okay. I would like to say to that, the latter part of your argument, a lot of the progressive reforms Bernie Sanders is preparing the American economy can't handle at this moment or under his election.
You ignored my point, which is I described. Or continue.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. America 2030, will it be better with a Clinton 2016 or with a Bernie Sanders 2016? If you had to guess.
I would personally, I think it's a little obvious considering that I've already said my position.
I'm saying...
But I think that Sanders is representative of how long have we been doing this? Because I feel like this has gotten pretty long. So I think it's time for closing statements.
Okay, we can do that.
All right. Considering that I started off, I believe, I'll have the first closing arguments, and then you can finish off. Does that sound good?
Yeah, and I was also thinking maybe like for an add-on, just kind of talk about some misconceptions about Hillary, whether by Bernie Sanders supporters or anyone.
I think that'd be best for a post. All right, so closing statements. I personally believe that Bernie is a good representation of America's future, and I think the best representation of what I just said as my representation is the fact that he has overwhelming support from the youth. I believe that he is the embodiment of the change that the youth wants in the United States, and that we will eventually get. I think that Sanders and Clinton are both ultimately fighting for the same things. I just think that Sanders would get us to those things much quicker, influence the American system and populace in a much more effective way, and is a more wholesome and some person in general, someone that I can respect. Hold on. This closing statement. Someone that I can respect, and someone that I believe life to these causes, and will stop at nothing to make sure that these causes are realized and kept.
Okay, I was going to say I have to go like right now, so I'm just going to say Hillary 2016, look at Southern Democrat or Enlightenment.
All right. And that was the first iPolitics debate. I apologize if it was a little unprofessional, but like we said in the very beginning, It was a very spontaneous thing. It was unplanned to a large extent, and both of us were relying entirely on pre-existing knowledge that we've had, and we didn't have a proper moderation system. Very late into the speech, a timer. But if you did watch this whole thing, or at least part of it, and just skip to the end, I thank you very much for watching. Many of you will, but if you do, it'll be very good. I hope you tune in for our next debates, which will be announced soon. And I wish you all a good night, a good morning, or a good day. Thank you very much.